John Shannon knows Calgary well, but he tells me he's in the big smoke these days, joins us here in hour two. John, welcome to the RP show, my man. How's summer? How's life out there?
Hey, tough to beat. Rainy day today, that means you can't golf. But, Rod, the summer is always spectacular. I even got to the Okanagan Valley before the fire started to play a little golf. Coming back to Alberta to play golf in September. So, work's getting in the way of golf.
Oh, well, tell me about that. Before we get into some hockey chat, what is keeping you busy? Maybe that is hockey stuff. What's keeping John Shannon busy these days?
Well, I used to do a lot of work in the TV world, the radio world in Winnipeg, Edmonton, Vancouver when it comes to hockey discussions. And I also do what you do. I do a daily show, Rod, with Bob McCowan, the Bob McCowan podcast that is on Sirius XM as well as on every podcast platform. And, we may not be as successful as the Rod Pedersen show, but we're doing okay.
And the thing is, I knew you were doing all of that. I just wanted to hear you say that. And I will speak for Bob McCowan's legion of fans whom I've had the great opportunity to meet many times. How's he doing?
Well, he's getting better. It's going to be anybody that's had a stroke probably understands it. It's going to take time, but he's patient. He understands what's going on. And, he comes on the show every Monday to give an update, and he's not afraid to come on and show people the progress or the lack of progress some weeks. So hopefully in the next couple of months we see Bob in his regular spot, and I can shovel off to the shotgun chair rather than being the host.
And golf a little more. Okay, look, I feel like, John, I don't get to chat with you very much, and I wish I would have had a chance more over the years. I want to push the hockey stuff away. You said you're dealing in the TV and radio world. I had a meeting last night, a supper with a broadcast executive here in Calgary. We talked about how this business is changed from what we would agree, you and I, the golden years. They ain't coming back. Where are we in the landscape of sports media now?
Well, here's, I'm one of those guys that actually I'm pretty optimistic. I believe in this business. I probably believe in this business more so now than I have in years when it was simple, when it was you doing play-by-play. When Hockey Night in Canada was Saturday nights and people tuned into television. There are still all these sporting events, if not more than ever. There's still a growing fan base more than ever. What's really changed is how we deliver the content. And I don't have to tell you, you're delivering content every day. We're delivering content every day. Technology has allowed us to get rid of giant infrastructure. And so it's becoming direct communication with the sports fan. And in many ways, rather than having suits and producers like me involved, now the viewer, the listener, the consumer is in charge of his own world. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, and I should clarify, I'm optimistic too. I guess my point is, you would agree it was the golden age. I certainly believe that it was. And that's not the same anymore. But as that executive said to me last night, it's the mom and pops. He's saying what you're saying. The big corporate giant, not what people want anymore. They like the craft beers. The smaller, what I'm saying? The intimate connection. Yeah.
You know what, Rod? The brewery industry is a great example, exactly what I'm talking about. When you and I were in our heyday, well, maybe you, there were three breweries that we talked about. We talked about Carling O'Keefe. You have to go Google that one. Molson and Labatt. That was it. Now, the cottage beer industry, the craft beer industry is a phenomenal story. And how much of a challenge are they getting and they taking from all the other spirits that are putting, mixers in alcohol and sticking it in a can? So there's nothing wrong with what we're going through. You just have to be and keep an open mind on how to adapt. And those people that do will survive.
Exactly, and give people what they want. I mean, it's a different age, John. I mean, can you imagine? Listen, you talked about how you heard me doing Rider games back in the day, and I think in the 90s, if we had Twitter and Facebook, I can't imagine what the Riders would have been through. The fan has a voice now, and we're all trying to get a lasso around that, you know?
And the question becomes for so many of us on this side of the microphone is how much do we pay attention to social media? How much do we, Jay Feaster, when he was running the Calgary Flames, had the great line about the 13-year-old in his underwear in the basement. And so much of that is, still a little true. So, you have to find a way. You can't just take compliments. You can't just take the criticism. You have to find a way to measure what social media says and then take stock in part of it. But you can't take stock in all of it. It doesn't make any sense. And by the way, that caller or the guy that texted in that said that the start times are dictated by the CBS Sports Network is full of it. There is not a chance that the CBS Sports Network, who is just taking the TSN feed and is happy to get the content, is dictating anything about the Canadian Football League. Let's make that clear. We don't kowtow to the Americans for anything when it comes to the CFL.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying that because I don't know. Having said that, TSN does, however. Do they not dictate start times?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're no different than any other network that is, let's face it, the number one corporate partner of the Canadian Football League. They pay almost $50 million a year for the right to have games on TSN. In many ways, like when you were around the league a lot, Rod, and I was around it a little bit, television networks have kept the CFL afloat for decades. The CBC did it, and CTV did it when we were kids, kept the league afloat for decades. And now what's happening is TSN's their number one corporate partner, and TSN has a lot of say, and TSN does a hell of a job with the CFL. So from that perspective, I don't see anything wrong with trying to figure out what works and what doesn't as far as your network partner's happy.
David from Winnipeg writes in. He says, John, I love your game breakdowns when the Winnipeg Jets are playing on CJOB. That from David. So there's
Beautiful.
that. Wayne in Victoria. Wayne in Victoria, BC says, is technology always good? No, but it can be used as a tool for good or bad. Technology's great. I wouldn't be sitting here in Calgary, nor Florida or Sass doing this show without it. So I love technology. It needs to be harnessed. But John, we all know that you're a wizard when it comes to television. Would you like to have ever gotten your hands on those CFL broadcasts to do your thing, or are you just happy being a fan?
Well, first of all, I have always been a fan of the Canadian Football League. I've loved it since I was a child growing up in the Okanagan Valley. That said, I did get a chance to produce 5 years when CTV walked away, and my next door neighbor, or my neighbor down the street, Doug Mitchell, came to me and said, would you be interested in starting the Canadian Football Network? And we sat at my kitchen table and we ran Canadian football out of my kitchen table up in Coach Hill in Calgary for 5 years, and I think we did okay. We had a good quality group of guys that were passionate about the games. We did a lot more games than anybody else over that period of time. And the good thing was that we put the game in such good shape that there was a bidding process after they decided to close down CFN, and TSN came full bore, and the CBC stuck with it for a few more years.
Okay, well, John, I remember watching it on my satellite on the farm. Bob Irving, CFN, and it was only 40 years ago, people, so forgive me for that. Started something great. Hey, John, how's the book sales going, by the way?
I guess we're doing okay. I mean, I went to a book signing the other day for a little while, so there is still a little bit of interest. Thanks for asking. It's been out about 10 months now. It's called Evolve or Die. And it's stories about my life in television, what I learned, what I screwed up, what I could do better. And in the end, it's very similar to this discussion we had at the beginning of this conversation, Rod, is how do we evolve? How do we change? How do we stay active? I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm closing in on 50 years in this business, and I still love it. And the only reason I think I've survived is because I've evolved. And if you don't evolve, you won't be hanging around very long. And so for me, this is kind of exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're so busy and crushing it. By the way, Jeff, the Stamps fan, writes in. He says, CFN, I remember that. Neil Lumsden. Oh, I ran into Jesse in a coffee shop this summer. I was like, I looked at him. Oh. If that isn't Neil Lumsden looking at me.
Well, I tell you what,
looks like his dad.
I remember the day Jesse was born, so that tells you how long Neil and I go back. Neil and Donna Lumsden. By the way, Neil's a member of provincial parliament here in Ontario now. So I'd like to think that we gave him a lot of influence on how to be a politician when he became a broadcaster for us.
Very, very, very polished guy. John, you're busy. I appreciate you fitting us in. Thanks for this. Hopefully we can do it again.
Hey, I know we got to go, and you were going to ask me for my predictions on the Metro, and yes. I think you read yours upside down. That's all I'm going to say. You must have read them upside. Although, no, but you had the Rangers out of the playoffs. What are you smoking?
How about that?
Well, I had Boston out last year. They lasted one round. So, yeah, it's fun. No wrong answers this time of year. Thanks, John.
Cheers.
The great John Shannon, author, broadcaster, producer.